part of my goal is also to keep teachers buoyant, excited about their teaching. The most satisfying and productive things that we can do together or for each other is talk about teaching.
My primary evaluator is constantly just checking in, especially that formative assessment, really seeing how we could take that further, but also taking a step back to also say, this is what you've done so far, you should be proud of what you've done so far, and to kind of keep going. Because a lot of the times, a lot of our goals take the whole year or 2 years to complete, and then it's kind of nice to hear that so far you've been doing so well, and that it's good to hear a compliment once in a while, so yeah.
In Step 4 of the 5-step evaluation cycle, evaluators prepare for mid-cycle formative assessments or evaluations by reviewing evidence and formulating questions about educators' performance and progress towards goal attainment.
There's a formative assessment and a formative evaluation. The formative assessment takes place for a teacher on a 1-year cycle, and that takes place in probably mid-February. Now, if a teacher's on a 2-year cycle, the formative evaluation takes place in June.
And one of the best parts, I think, for me that came out of my formative meetings was the parts they could add in, because we don't see every bit. I think it's important for them to have that voice in it, knowing that, you can only upload so many artifacts, there's only so much that can live there online, but then they have a say in it as well. It's not just me. It's a conversation that we're coming to a conclusion together.
Formative assessment and evaluation conferences create a forum for educators and evaluators to touch base about an educator's practice and growth midway through the 5-step cycle, and to make any necessary adjustments to goals or activities.
The formative assessment ties into the SMART goals and the action steps by, again, touching base to see where they are mid-year through the cycle. If a teacher has identified that they're going to observe 4 colleagues by the end of the year, identify best practices and implement them into their own classroom, that we'll be able to walk through and say, all right, you said you were going to be able to do this by October 1st, that you would have observed 1 colleague. Have you done that? Who did you observe? What kind of things did you take away from the observation? How have you implemented that into your own classroom?
Yes. So this should be the first one that you read.
The evaluator meets with their teacher. They sit down in the office and discuss any evidence that's been uploaded. They go through a dialogue box that during unannounced observations, just to kind of review everything that's been taking place, take a look for patterns, take a look at areas of improvement, and for best practices.
All right, here's the next thing. So we read.
This is an ongoing self-improvement evaluation. The teacher isn't expected to have attained all their goals at that time. We'd like to see a couple of action steps maybe being met, but certainly halfway through a cycle, especially if it's a 2-year cycle, I really don't want my teachers to say, oh yeah, I've completed my action steps, I've completed all my goals halfway through.
During the formative assessment or evaluation, educators can refocus their objectives for professional learning and growth.
That formative discussion is really where we try to talk about, is it going how you thought? Sometimes teachers will say, I anticipated this goal would go one way, and I'm not really sure that that's the path it's going to take. And we talk about that, and then we kind of direct the course of action for the last year. And in my formative write-up, I will explicitly tell them, this is where we've agreed that we're going to focus moving forward, and please gather evidence to support this. And I try to be very direct with them based on the conversation so that they have some real guidance on to where to proceed.
I try to set something more concrete that I can do that's kind of a small step that then I can build on for the next year, kind of strengthen my teaching practice.
Overall, formative assessments and evaluations provide clarity and transparency in the educator improvement process. It ensures that there are no surprises for educators heading into the summative evaluation. It also keeps the focus on educator growth and student achievement.
I see the teachers seeing this as more of a valuable process for them in their own growth, as opposed to kind of the gotcha. They're growing on their own in a very proactive way, which has been really refreshing.
For me, I feel like some of the best conversations I have with educators is during that formative assessment halfway through the cycle, because that's where we're able to kind of look back and say, okay, what have you done so far, and where do we need to focus the last half of the cycle?